Today's Lunch and Learn, Teen Dating Violence, Love Shouldn't Hurt, brought to you by the Abinra Education Series and Victim's Voice. The Victim's Voice app is the only legally admissible documentation tool that meets the standard of evidence and allows victims of domestic abuse to safely, securely, and privately store evidence-based details of each incident until such time as the user decides a report is needed. Available individually and through organizations and agencies in 40 states across the U.S. Victim's Voice. We are giving victims a legal voice. Our first presenter is someone I'm personally proud to call my friend. While he is unable to present to us live today, what he has to say is powerful and comes from firsthand experience, just not what you might expect. This When Dating Hurts talk is presented by Bill Mitchell, who lost his daughter, Kristen, to dating violence in 2005. She was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Since those dark days, Bill has spoken about dating violence over 100 times before high schools, colleges, community groups, law enforcement, and through TV, radio, and podcasts. In 2020, Bill published his family's memoir entitled When Dating Hurts. In 2021, he launched the highly popular When Dating Hurts podcast, where he interviews those with keen insights into domestic violence. In 2021, Bill also narrated and published the When Dating Hurts audiobook, now available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. Bill feels parents and teens must learn to recognize the warning signs of an unhealthy relationship. A firm grip on these red flags empowers them to spot and ward off potential danger and help someone they care about. Oftentimes, the one being abused is not able to wholly understand what they are experiencing until they're in real trouble. Bill also likes to discuss what a healthy relationship looks and feels like. Bill and his wife, Michelle, feel their daughter would be alive today if she and her friends knew the warning signs they saw but could not interpret as precursors to what would happen. So without further ado, Bill Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Bill Mitchell, and I'm the author of the When Dating Hurts book. Today we're going to be talking about dating violence. I'm going to show you the warning signs that I've learned over the course of the 17 years since my daughter's tragedy. I'm also going to share with you the template, something I call the template that every abuser follows. And I have a lot of other things that I want to discuss with you and share so that you'll have a really good feeling of what dating violence is all about, how to detect it, and what to do in case it ever crosses your path or touches your family or your friends. So let's go ahead and let's get started. These photos, of course, were from my daughter's college graduation from St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, May 14th, 2005. And you can see on that day, she never looked more radiant, never looked so happy, was so full of pride, very happy to have gone there, but also happy to be a graduate now. She had a job already lined up, which I'll tell you about, but these are just these nice photos taken that day of Kristen, my daughter. Here's some more. On the left side, you see our family of 4 in those days. You see my son David, you see Kristen, you see my wife Michelle and me. And on the right, of course, Kristen and David. And they were 4 years apart, but they were just so great together. Just a fine son and daughter. Now, what I just showed you was May 14th, 2005. And then 20 days later, June 2nd, 2005, and what was going on at that time. But you see Kristen in her kitchen in this new apartment she had moved into because her job was starting soon with General Mills. And it was a job that everybody at St. Joe's wanted who was in the food marketing area, which she was in. Some other pictures from graduation, just a kind of a smattering of pictures of Kristen. But you see she was just a nice, happy, wholesome young woman who was blossoming in life. And that string of pictures at the bottom, there are selfies. And it's always nice to look at those pictures But the downside of it is that those pictures were taken about 4 hours before she was attacked and killed. So it's pretty bittersweet. The one thing in her life that wasn't working all that well was a guy that she'd been dating that year. And for our purposes, the purposes of the book and the purposes today, I just call him Nick. I made up that name. It's not his name. But Nick was a problem. And we'll talk about Nick and guys like Nick, or people like Nick, since dating violence can be men and women, and it can go in either direction. It can be women and women who are partners. It can be men and men. But most of what I talk about today is men abusing women, because that's the most common. Nick, on that last day, and that's why I picked June 2nd, Kristen's last full day. On that day, what did he have going on? Well, she wanted to spend that day with a couple of friends she went through school with and she graduated with. And so she told him and made it clear that, look, I'm going to be with these people all day, and I'll catch up with you later that day or the next. But the other part of it was that I know was that it was leading up to her breaking up with him. So there was a lot going on. But anyway, on that June 2nd day, he was very jealous of Kristen spending the entire day with her friends. And so since he was jealous of that time, he was interrupting Kristen with texts and calls. And he was also kind of lying about where he spent his day. He was actually, during that time, seeing an old girlfriend from before when he dated Kristen. So he was kind of misbehaving anyway. But still, he wanted to see Kristen and just was becoming angrier and angrier and angrier as time wore on. So now I'll take you to June 3rd, 2005, the next day. And so that entire day passed, and in the evening, I got a call from local detectives. Now, Kristen was in Philadelphia at that time. I live outside of Baltimore, so we're about 125 miles apart. But I got a call from detectives who said they needed to meet with me, and they needed to tell me something, and that it couldn't be over the phone. So that went back and forth a little bit because I didn't understand why they couldn't just tell me, but I picked a grocery store, and that's the place right there by that Gatorade container that I met with police on the evening of June 3rd, 2005. And that's when I was given a parent's worst nightmare when this detective told me, I'm sorry to inform you that your daughter was murdered today by her boyfriend. So that's where I was when I heard that. Now, why does something like this happen? Well, there's a lot more to it. But Kristen didn't know what to look for in the unhealthy relationship she was in. She knew it was bothersome. She knew she eventually wanted to break up with this guy, and she was trying to do it that day. But she didn't know what to look for in an unhealthy or abusive relationship. She just knew that he was problems at times. Her friends didn't know what to look for. They knew that he was difficult too. Her teachers didn't know what to look for. I say that because she actually shared this with a couple of teachers, and they just didn't really come out and say, well, maybe it's dating abuse or anything like that. And her parents didn't know what to look for. And I say that because Kristen, on a phone call with her mother, had said at one point in time, well, this is not the perfect relationship. And her mother just figured that meant that it's going to break up one of these days soon. And, that's it. She didn't go into, well, what would be a perfect relationship or what's wrong with the relationship. She didn't really go any further. She just figured it's going to end. That's it. Now, I'm going to give you a few domestic violence definitions, and this is the first one. And these are definitions I found over the years. But it's the willful intimidation, physical assault, sexual assault, battery, and or other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. Now, one thing that I'm asked more often than anything else if I give a talk, give a speech, is to review some of the warning signs. So that was really the primary assignment here. Let's go through those, but you have to understand they all fit under this one big umbrella, which is power and control. So power and control is controlling or dominant behavior in and of itself. One person trying to overpower another person most of the time. It can be checking your phone, your email, your social media accounts, but the idea is without your permission. Okay, so this person is really digging into your life. Someone who maybe puts you down frequently, especially in front of other people. Someone who tries to isolate you from friends or family, and they try to do it physically, financially, or emotionally. It's extreme jealousy or insecurity, as we talked about Nick and Kristen. Explosive outbursts, temper, or mood swings. All of these put a fear into that other person, and therefore you can control that other person by doing that type of thing. Any form of physical harm, any hard push, any punch, strangulation, smacking, throwing something at somebody, any kind of physical harm. And obviously possessiveness or controlling behavior. That's really what this is all about. And it can be pressuring you or forcing you to have sex. These are all warning signs, and there can be many more. What is it about abusers? Well, abusers are usually well liked and quite charming, at least in the beginning. And I'll talk about when I walk through a template that I created, and it's coming up soon. But they're usually very well liked and quite charming. Okay, so they come on in such a way that they're actually pretty attractive. You kind of want to be around them. Abusers prefer to emotionally abuse and physically abuse out of sight from others. They do this to gain power and control, but they don't really want to be known for this outside of the relationship. Abusers create barriers to previous associations their victims have. They create this kind of us versus them against family and friends to cause isolation. And isolation is a huge part of it. These type of things don't happen on the first date. They don't happen in the first month maybe, but it is a systematic thing that these people are doing. This is part of the program, to isolate you, to just make it you and me and really nobody else. Abusers will return to that charming person from time to time. It's part of a cycle. I'll take you through that in just a minute. But they go from being the abusive person back to the charming person. So it's like they make it bad, which is kind of like a punishment time, and then they come back to that nice person, which is kind of a rewarding time. Something I just heard about recently, but it's kind of the flying monkeys approach, meaning like almost like the Wizard of Oz with the witch and the flying monkeys. So abusers often use their friends or their so-called fan club, but people, kind of like a bully and his buddies, but they use them to do their dirty work for them. So sometimes they're the ones that will bring you messages about, hey, Nick's not very happy about this. They don't really want to get their hands any dirtier than they have to. The abused partner doesn't want to take on a crowd, so eventually they give in. They look at it like, especially maybe in high school, they look at it like, wow, if I don't go along with this person, I'm going to lose a lot of friends in this, and I don't really want to lose my friends. So next what I want to talk about is the template that every abuser follows. And I've talked with a lot of people over 17 years. And somewhere along the line, I started to realize there's kind of a step-by-step that abusers employ to get their way and to control another person. So let's walk through it. It's very easy to understand and follow. It starts with this kind of storybook romance style. It's somebody that's perhaps more charming, more wonderful than anybody you've ever met. Somebody who spends money on you, takes you to nice places, somebody that buys you things, somebody that always seems to say the right things. But these people are practiced at this. They get good at it over the course of time, or they wouldn't be successful. That leads to isolation. Again, it doesn't happen right away, but it's somebody who really doesn't prefer you being around your own friends, and this person doesn't want to be around your friends either. Really doesn't even want you to be around your own family members. Everybody sort of represents the enemy to this person. So these other people need to kind of like be cropped out of the picture. Then it typically leads into some kind of threat of violence or some kind of reprisal or some kind of a punishment, but it's a threat. It's somebody who might say to you, when you talk with me like that, it's almost like I'd want to hit you, okay? And it's like, I don't want to do that, but boy, that really makes me mad, okay? So you're thinking, wow, I'd like this person better when it was fun and when it was that storybook romance part. So I don't like this person like this. I better go along with the program. That's when those threats work. If for some reason you don't go along with the program, or that person doesn't feel you're going along with that program, then it might lead into actual violence. So yes, you get shoved hard, or maybe you get punched, or maybe you get slapped, or maybe you get strangulated, or pushed down a flight of steps, or have something thrown at you, or have your pet hit. All these types of things are on the list of things that could happen. And typically over the course of time, whatever's happening in the area of violence just gets worse. Then the next part, which is kind of insidious in and of itself, is the convincing apology. It's somebody that comes up with some kind of a reason why that happened. Look, I had a horrible week. Or, when you say things like that, it reminds me of my mother, and it used to make me so angry when she said those types of things to me. Or it's somebody who thought they were going to get a big raise, or they're going to get a bonus that week and they didn't get it. And so they kind of use that as, look, I've been on edge all week. Okay, it's really not about you. I apologize. I'm sorry. It'll never happen again. It never happened before. And then what we kind of get into is we repeat. We go right back to storybook romance. So it's like, look, I'm apologizing for what happened. This person may or may not admit that what happened was his own fault or her own fault, if it's a woman being the abuser. But whatever happens, the next thing you know, everything's wonderful again. Maybe this person buys you a new phone, or this person buys you jewelry, or whatever it is. The house is clean all of a sudden, just like magic, and you think, oh boy, this is better. You're back into that storybook romance. But the other parts then follow. And when you think of all those warning signs, and you think of all those, the template, all of that, these are things that Kristen didn't know about, and she didn't know the potential danger she was in. This was not really taught in high school. This was really not taught in college at that time. And in some cases, it's barely taught now. So I'm so glad that we're doing what we're doing right now. But now you know what to look for because we've just reviewed these. So let's go from here. Now there's some people, could be parents, could be teens, could be high school or college kids who hear about this type of stuff and they think, it doesn't really happen here. That happens in other areas. It happens in the depressed parts of town. It happens around certain socioeconomic situations and people. And, that's really, it doesn't go on. This doesn't happen on our street. It really could. It probably does. So you think it can't happen to your family, right? Well, I probably wouldn't have thought it would happen to our family either. But here's the one statistic that I use, and that is that 1 in 3 women will suffer serious physical violence in an intimate partner relationship at some point in their lives. It typically happens between the ages of 16 and 24. And some information I've seen lately makes it sound like it's more like 14 to 24. So 1 in 3 women, that's quite a few. Can't happen to your family. Well, maybe it doesn't happen to your child, but how about your child's friends? Okay, it's 1 in 3 women. If your daughter has any number of friends, then somebody's going to go through it. Wouldn't it be better if you knew about it and you believed it can happen? If it doesn't happen to your child's friends, maybe it happens to your niece, or maybe it happens to one of your coworkers, or maybe it happens to one of your neighbors. So better to know about it, better to have your antenna up and have a sense of what this is all about, because it'll probably cross your path in some fashion. Can't happen to your family? Well, if you believe that and you don't want the information, then you leave your family open to it because you're just unprepared. Meaning like the warning signs could be kind of buzzing around you at times, but you kind of blew it off. You don't think it has anything to do with you. And for that reason, you're not going to know it if it was living, in your house. And you missed the warning signs because you didn't really believe it in the first place. Can't happen to your family? Well, it does happen in every city, state, and zip code all across this country. In fact, all around the world. And it happens typically behind closed doors. And maybe that's one of the reasons that you haven't heard about it. Can't happen to your family? Well, the fact is that ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It will touch the life of someone you know. That I can guarantee you. And I'll tell you, ever since this happened with my daughter, I've had a cousin contact with me and say that she went through it in her marriage and it was horrible. I've had two of my cousins, different cousins, children contact me and they've been through it in their marriages. And I've had people I've worked with who've come forward. So people don't tend to talk about it, but it's there. Now the question is, what do you do if you detect dating violence? Well, the fact of the matter is you don't just detect it and say, wow, I hope it's not that. You do something. You absolutely do something. If somebody comes to you and they share, and what they're sharing with you about their life starts sounding like dating violence, there's two things. Number one, you listen to that person. And as much as you don't maybe want to hear it, this could be your daughter telling you, look, I need to talk about something that's going on. You don't really want to hear it and you really don't want to believe it, okay? Because you don't want any parts of it. And I understand that. But what do you do? What is listening in this case? Listening means you let them talk, and your place is to listen. That doesn't mean you don't talk at all, but that means you don't interrogate them. You want them to do the talking. Not only do you want to know what's going on, but you want them to express it because you want them to think it through and express it. You want them to be thinking about it quite a lot because you want them to eventually get out of that situation. You don't want to challenge them. You have to accept what they're saying is the way it is, but you don't want to be judging. You don't want to be challenging, and you're going to want to do that, and I understand that, but you just can't. And the reason is it doesn't help. You could ask yourself, could this situation get worse? Okay, so what you're hearing you might not like, but could it get worse? And the fact is that yes, it typically escalates, meaning that it typically happens more often and what's going on becomes stronger, or in this case, worse. It typically becomes more frequent. It typically then becomes more dangerous. And that's why somebody who's pushed on one day could later be hit and maybe strangulated on a different day. And it's pretty terrifying. I know it's a tough subject. It's icky. It's bad, but it's real. So we all have to face it, okay? They need to know, the person who's the abused person, they need to know they're not alone. And if they come to you, that means that you need to stick with them somehow. You need to let them know they're not on their own anymore, that there will be help. Okay, and they need to know what's happening is not their fault. Now, if I'm a parent and I have a child come to me and say they're going through this, then I'm going to be thinking things like, well, I didn't like you dating him in the first place, or I never liked that guy, And then you want to kind of you're freaking out a little bit and you want it to stop. So you want to kind of blame somebody, but you got to understand you don't blame the abused person. You can blame the person who's doing it, but not the person it's happening to. No one deserves to be treated this way. Absolutely nobody. Okay, this is happening to them. And the way it goes, as I talked about earlier, it's something that is insidious. It sneaks up on people, okay? The people who do this are practiced at this. Chances are this is not the first time they've done something like this. So it kind of makes its way in over the course of time, and before the abused person knows it, they are a walking, talking victim at that point. And the other thing is that when that person comes to you, whoever you are, whether you're that person's friend or the parent or a teacher, whoever you are, you could be the first person that they're telling this to. Okay, so you don't want to reject it and push it back at them, because that'll teach that person, I better not share this with anybody, and then they're really isolated and alone. That's not good. So let's talk about what not to do. Ask too many questions. Okay, so you want them to talk about it, but you want them to find their way with it. Your job, you are not a detective. You're not interrogating somebody. You want to help bring them along. You can say things like, wow, how long has this been going on? Let them talk. How does it make you feel? but you don't want to be battering them with questions. One of the accidents that people make, parents make, is that when something like this comes to them, they look at it like, I don't really want this to be going on, and they start shouting and they start banging their fists. They don't realize, but they practically become another abuser, another person giving a hard time to this person sitting in front of them. You don't want to be that person. You want to be part of the help. And your deal is to let them talk. Try not to interrupt. Let them roll through it. They need, and this is critically important, they need to talk themselves out of this situation. You want to try to solve the problem, but the fact is that the abused person has to solve it himself or herself. You can't do that for them. You can lead them along, but they have to do it. They got into it, and they have to start to learn how to get out of it. What not to do? Get angry that this is happening. Of course this is horrible news. Of course you don't want this for your child, or you don't want this for your friend, or you don't want this for your friend at work, your coworker, or your niece. Of course. And you get emotional. That's not helping. Becoming aggressive, that doesn't help. Your being wants to do that, but it does not do any good. Search out the abuser. I've asked myself if this had happened and if I had a fair amount of awareness of it, wouldn't I want to go see that guy? Yeah, I pretty much would. But knowing what I know now, it doesn't help. It doesn't work. It doesn't stop anything. And it can get very dangerous. And all of a sudden that person gets hurt or killed, or you wind up getting hurt or killed, or God knows what. What not to do? Getting frustrated if things don't clear up quickly. Of course this is bad news, and of course you want it over with ASAP. Why wouldn't you? But the fact of the matter is it took a while for this to happen. It's going to take a while for this to go away. What not to do? Forget it's about the feelings of the survivor and not your own feelings. Very easy for you to take it upon yourself and think about how this affects you and how this has messed up your day. And, what am I going to do now? This is a big problem. I don't know what to do. My head's on fire. That's not the point. It's not the point. The point is it's happening to someone else, and you need to support that person. That's really your place. And one of the first places you can turn to is pick up the phone and call the domestic violence hotline. They are there 24/7, 800-799-SAFE. Okay? Give them a call. You can call them up. You can talk for any length of time. You can hang up at any point in time. Or you can call your local domestic violence agency and just say, look, I don't even know what to do. I'm new to this, but this thing is going on. It's either going on with yourself, it's going on with your child, it's going on with your friend, whoever it is. And you can explain the circumstances, and these people are trained to do this. And a lot of people who answer these calls are people who've been through it themselves in one way or another. Another definition of domestic violence: a widespread epidemic of pain and suffering that leads to a lifetime of broken dreams. And I can tell you, in our family, it has led to a lifetime of broken dreams, absolutely. Without my daughter here, it changed everything. It really put us on a different trajectory in life. And that's that, right? I was asked to talk a little bit about starting the conversation with your kids. So let's go into that for a bit. Starting the conversation, one of the questions would be how young, what's the earliest we could start with our kids? Well, it really depends on the child, and it definitely should happen before they are dating. But you don't dive into a conversation about dating violence. That's not the first thing you talk about. What you want to talk about first is what a healthy relationship is. That's where the discussion takes place, because the behavior in a healthy relationship is really not different at all from a dating relationship. It's still kind of like a friend relationship, except maybe that these people think that they are in some version or early version of love or something. But it still has all the give and take of a relationship, of a partnership of some kind. Starting the conversation, part of it is to discuss what controlling behavior is, what that looks like, what the techniques are. Because as we're growing up, we're always trying those things. We're always trying to get someone else to do what we want. But that needs to be a conversation, okay? It needs to be a conversation about it's okay to do that, but to what extent do you do it? That's where it's either healthy or not healthy. And also to discuss what putting someone down feels like, okay? Sometimes we do it and it's very playful, and sometimes we do it and it's just flat out mean. So that needs to be talked about. Also, in starting the conversation, discuss what abuse is. What verbal abuse looks and feels like, what emotional abuse is, physical abuse. It's not too hard to understand what those things are, but it's a good thing to be in a conversation about how your children interact with other children. And the fact of the matter is that a healthy relationship with friends is a good practice for healthy relationships with someone you think you might love. But that's where we practice it, okay? That's where we understand fairness and we understand equality in making decisions. So that's really where to start the conversation. Let's talk a little bit more about healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships, and I have examples for you. Healthy relationship examples. Your partner is very supportive of things you do. So you want to take up playing the piano? Sure. You want to learn how to play tennis? Great. Let's do it. Versus no. Your partner shares decision making with you. I talked about that. Kind of an equal, you get your way sometimes, I get my way. Just kind of kind of a very friendly, keep it light, but it isn't always about what I want to do. Your partner encourages you to try new things. That's a good thing. Your partner likes to listen when you have something on your mind. Okay, not somebody that's like, well, it's all about me, so I don't really want to talk about that because that's something you're interested in and I'm not. Your partner understands you have your life, your own life too, and you have your own friends. So that's something that in an unhealthy relationship is not part of the story. You don't really get to have friends, because it's really your friend is me. I'm it. I'm everything. Your partner is liked by your friends. That's important. You want to kind of keep your friends, but also maybe you have this other new relationship. So, you hope that your partner is liked by your friends and everybody gets along and it's all really good. But let's talk about some unhealthy relationship examples too. Your partner says you're too involved in different activities. So that person wants you to narrow it down. Your partner texts or calls you all the time. That's one that Kristen suffered through quite a lot. Her phone was always going off with this guy if he wasn't right there with her. Your partner thinks you spend too much time trying to look nice. That person's concerned you look nice, not just to him, let's say, but to maybe other guys. And that's not so good because I don't want you to get away. Your partner gets extremely jealous or possessive. This guy had that problem too. Your partner accuses you of flirting or cheating. He used to do that quite a lot too. And she would then have fights with him about the fact that I don't know why you're saying that. Nothing else is going on. Your partner constantly checks up on you and makes you check in with them. That's another one that this Nick fellow used to do. Your partner controls what you wear or how you look. He would get into that too. Your partner tries to control what you do and who you see. That's right there. Your partner tries to keep you from seeing or talking to your family and friends, which is pretty extreme. Somebody who's not comfortable with your talking with your own family members, you've got to know that that's a warning sign. Your partner has big mood swings. They get angry and yell at you 1 minute, but are sweet and apologetic the next. So that kind of speaks for itself, right? Your partner makes you feel like no one would ever want you. It's kind of like, look, you should be happy that I'm even interested in you. Okay, I'm almost like the last resort for you. And it's a made up thing, but if the abused person buys it, then it works. Your partner puts you down, calls you names, or criticizes you. That's just another power and control technique. Your partner threatens to hurt you, your friends, or your family. Again, power and control. Your partner threatens to harm themselves because of you. I know of a number of instances I've heard about over the last few years of somebody saying, if you ever break up with me, I'd probably kill myself. Your partner threatens to destroy your things. I mean, if you're thinking of it being a nice or loving relationship, none of this would ever enter into this. Your partner makes you feel nervous or like you're walking on eggshells. That's a relationship that is extremely unhealthy and really needs some discussion and strong consideration about leaving. Your partner grabs, pushes, shoves, chokes, punches, slaps, holds you down, throws things, or hurts you in some way. That's unhealthy. Your partner makes you feel like you can't do anything right, or they blame you for problems. That's an area that's called gaslighting. Your partner breaks or throws things to intimidate you. Again, keeping you on edge equals control over you. Your partner yells, screams, or humiliates you in front of other people. This person embarrasses you. So what does that teach you? That if you're going to stay with this person, you'd be better off not being around other people. Therefore, you're isolated. Your partner pressures or forces you into having sex or going further than you want to. That's something that you just can't put up with. That means that relationship has to be ended, but it needs to be done safely. Healthy relationships. Everyone deserves a healthy relationship safe from violence and fear. Protect yourself and your loved ones from abuse by learning the warning signs. You can see why they're so important. So the question then is, who are these abusers? Who are they? That takes me to the third definition of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another in an intimate relationship. Why do abusers abuse? Well, it stems from a desire to gain and maintain power and control over an intimate partner. And you've seen in all these examples, that's what's running through every one of them. Abusers believe they have the right to control and restrict their partner's lives. They actually feel like this is why, I'm supposed to do this. Abusers feel their own feelings and needs should be the priority. It's all about me. Abusers enjoy exerting the power that abuse gives them. It's a pretty heady thing to think that you get your way all the time with another person. Abusers like to feel more valuable than their partner, because it is all about me. Abuse. Well, abuse is a learned behavior. People aren't born with this. It's learned, witnessed in their own families growing up, or learned from friends and from popular culture. So it's something that is attained over the course of time because it looks like it achieves things. Abuse is a choice made by the abuser. They can actually decide to abuse or not to abuse. There are people who grow up in families that have abuse who look at that and say, you know what, I'll never do that, and I'll never allow that around me again. And there are others who see it, learn it, and then employ it. It's not caused by alcohol and drug addiction, but it can be escalated by them. A lot of people who abuse point to alcohol and to drugs and say, well, it's because of that I do this. It's just not true. It's been proven not to be true. It just enhances these other things. Abusers and victims. The truth of it is that anyone can be an abuser and anyone can be a victim of abuse. And that abuse happens regardless of gender, age, sexuality, race, economic status, ability, citizen status, or any factor or identity. Okay? It can happen to anyone. And you can't say it just doesn't happen around people like me, or it doesn't happen in our neighborhood or around where we live. It doesn't hold water. Victims have feelings of confusion, fear, anger, isolation, and that nobody will understand what they're experiencing. And that's why they feel so alone. And that's why if somebody ever reaches out to you, it then becomes your place to help that person. And again, one of the best places to start is with the Domestic Violence Hotline, 800-799-SAFE, or get in touch with your local domestic violence agency. Call them up, go see them. And again, you can take as much information and get as much help as you feel comfortable with. Let's talk about breaking up a little bit. Breaking up is exactly this. It's dangerous. So let's talk about breaking up, and let's say that it's your daughter and she's thinking about breaking up with this guy, or you want her to break up with this guy. And what's going on with you at that time? Not with your daughter, but with you. Okay, well, right off the bat, your mind is going crazy. Okay, you don't want this thing in your life. You don't want this in your daughter's life. You don't want your family facing this. You don't want this guy or whoever it is anywhere near your child. It's understandable. You want your child to be away from this abuser, of course. You want your child to be safe, because right now you feel like your child is very not safe, okay? You want this to end now. You want this over as soon as possible. That makes perfect sense. The problem is you can't just have your way with this. This is different. This relationship took time to happen, and it comes with many entanglements. This is not easy. There is no quick fix. This relationship will take time to end. It's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. And serious repercussions can happen unless this is handled very carefully and in a safe manner. Your actions could accidentally push these two people closer together, because victims tend to defend their abusers. So you hear what's going on and maybe you lose it. You don't stay cool. You pounce. You judge. You ask a lot of questions. You try to get forceful. You become threatening. You could very, very much so push the person, your child, back to that other person who goes back and says, look, my mother's really, she doesn't want us to date, and she's really mad at me and all these other things. Well, the person who's the abuser hears that and they're thinking, okay, I know what to do in this case. You need to stay away from your parents as much as possible, because he doesn't want this to end. This is the way he wants things, okay? So you have to watch it. That's why you need coaching. That's why you call up domestic violence people and say, okay, here's the situation. And you get coaching and you follow it. Breaking up with someone who's all about power and control is so dangerous. I lost my daughter when she was breaking up with this guy. I know what I'm talking about. And I met other parents who've lost their children under these circumstances. We didn't have those warnings in our minds. Our kids didn't have them. But that's why we're doing this today. So work with the domestic violence agency counselor to create an escape plan. It's really important to do that. And I'm not going to go into escape plans today because they're somewhat complicated, but it is a way out of this. Domestic violence counselors know the pitfalls of these relationships and how to break up from them. Many domestic violence counselors are survivors themselves. So a lot of them have been through this. Either they saw something happen with a family member or it's happened with them. Okay, so it's not just learned through books and through seminars. And there are domestic violence counselors who work specifically with teens. So, if your child is 12, 13, 14, or whatever age, there are people who know exactly how to handle it, because someone 14 years old who's in a domestic violence relationship, they have different concerns and needs than obviously somebody in their 30s or 40s. You see why the warning signs need to be learned, and they need to be shared, meaning you need to learn them and you need to share them with other people. Warning signs can prevent your child from getting trapped in the first place. And that's why we're doing this today. Again, I just put these two out there, but the domestic violence hotline, if you haven't written it down yet, please do. 800-799-SAFE. And another wealth of information that I turn to quite often is the Love is Respect website, loveisrespect.org. Going there is great. There's all kinds of information. It's really worth your time. And we're talking about a friend of yours, or we're talking about your child. It's worth the time. Just a few more pictures of our family. Back in, I guess, what I would call the good old days when there was 4 of us around. Pictures of my daughter. You can see what a lovely person she was. She was fun, and sorely miss her. Sorely miss her. That's why I do what I do, really. I do it so that someone else doesn't have to go through this. These pictures, again, were those selfies that were taken of Kristen only hours before she was attacked and murdered by this guy. And I leave you with this one main thing, which is to learn the warning signs. That's really the key thing. You can learn them by picking up a copy of my book from Amazon. You can get it as a paperback. You can get it as an ebook. You can nowadays get it as an audiobook. You can listen to the podcast series, which we launched last year. And at the bottom, I mentioned whendatinghurts.com, our website that has most of this information too, or at least can lead you to this information very quickly. I want to thank you for asking me to come and do this today. And I hope you've learned quite a lot. I hope you can retain it. So I wish you the very best, and take good care. Stay safe. Keep your kids safe.
Wow. Thank you, Bill. There are so many takeaways, and I encourage you all to rewatch this and share it. But before we move on, let's do a bit of role playing to show the types of situations teens often face in relationships. I'm going to share with you a couple of clips from the Netflix series OBX. The first one shows Sarah with her longtime boyfriend Topper. While they've been together for a while, it isn't the healthiest of relationships. Warning, this does include moments of teenage intimacy. Next, Sarah is with someone she knows but has not been in a relationship with. Again, warning, this does include moments of teenage intimacy. We see the vast difference in how Sarah's hesitation to proceed was handled, and you can see it in her face and her body language. The second situation was clearly one of respect for the decision Sarah made not to continue in physical intimacy. Our next speaker is both a Victims Voice partner member and a leader in her community. Shakina Rush is the founder of She Is You, a nonprofit serving the needs of survivors in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. As an overcomer and the founder of She Is You, she is applying her skills and passion for those impacted by domestic violence, sexual abuse, and sexual assault to change lives. She Is You Incorporated is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide supportive services such as mental health, education, and employment resources, self-esteem building, intimate partner and relationship counseling, and resources that can lead individuals to a more productive life. Shakina knows firsthand of how all three can have a detrimental effect on an individual's life. She decided to create She Is You to spread awareness, inform, and offer support to those who find themselves looking for solutions and a way to overcome their circumstances. Much like her entrepreneurial endeavors, Shakina's big vision for She Is You includes transitional housing, educational programs, and job training and placement in order to ensure individuals become financially independent. So I'm pleased to now introduce Shakina Rush.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for, hanging in there, um, and seeing everything through. It's a lot of important information that we're covering. And thank you. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Shakina Rush, and I am an overcomer of sex abuse, sexual assault, and domestic violence. I experienced sex abuse at a very young age, up until I was around 9 years old. So I am a certified mental health first aider, and as Sherry said, I am the founder of She Is You Inc. And we're based in Philadelphia. So just to kind of go over, um, just a little bit of, what we're, the topic or whatever, teen dating and intimate partner violence. I first experienced my intimate partner violence at the age of 13, and I made it out alive about time I turned 30. So so I want to talk about how to identify intimate partner violence. It can be physical and emotional signs. Um, you know, um, those are like common actions of the abuser. Okay, so like when I say emotional signs, it's like okay, they're very possessive. Like every step, I'm sorry, physical, they're very possessive. So every step that the partner might take, or, you know, um, yeah, every step that the other partner might take, they're right there. So they always have to have direct access to that person. Um, Also, how to combat and prevent intimate partner violence in your teens. So you always want to be involved. Um, Oftentimes, like abusers, they map out, they stake out. I'm sorry, the scenery. They watch your with your teen, with your child, or whoever your guardian over. They watch your interactions. They watch your emotional state when you're with them, and people can see when someone is really loved and cared for. So you want to make sure that you're very involved, you're very attentive, you're very present in that teen life. Okay, and also you want to be honest with them, even if it takes you opening up and talking about some experiences that you may have had, or someone that may have had. Um, Try not to keep secrets, you know, um, and build that trust. Be their um. I My daughter. I have a 23-year daughter, and I remember her telling me something very personal, and I shared it with my other family members, and she's like, "Well, mom, that was something that I wanted to keep between me and you. It wasn't something really life threatening, but it was something that she just wanted to share with me personally." And I learned that it kind of broke her trust in me a little bit. Okay, Sherry, next slide, please. So as was mentioned in the previous presentation, 26% of victims, they're abused by the age of 18. And like I stated, my abuse started at the age of I'm going to say 13, 14. I was being abused by a boyfriend who was maybe 2 years older than me. And so was a lot of my other friends. They were being abused by their partners as well. It was something that was very accepted within our inner circle. Um, and another thing, you want to pay attention to their friends, because our friends at that age, they have the most impact. We tend to listen more to friends. Well, teens tend to listen more to their friends than they do anyone else. One out of 11 female high school students, they reported in the past year 15%, okay, by the age of 18. One out of 14 male high school students reported in the past year as well. Sherry, can you go to the next slide, please? So, intimate partner violence, it occurs when partners engage in abusive behavior to control or manipulate others. It can take place in a person, online, or through technology. Teen dating violence can include the following types of behavior: physical violence, like I said, sexual violence, stalking, and psychological aggression. So now, as for me, as an overcomer, the root of me becoming a victim of domestic violence, I think it stemmed from my sexual abuse. So my self defense mechanism, my psychological self defense, I mean, it was just completely distorted. So I had no real idea or no real true example of what, love and healthy interactions was supposed to be like, or was supposed to feel. So I was really, my self esteem was really just, destroyed. And having a healthy self esteem, um, it makes all the difference in being able to distinguish what's good, what's bad, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what's safe, and what's unsafe. Sherry, can you go to the next slide, please? So, of course, we know the physical signs is hitting, kicking, and pushing. Unwanted sexual acts, as we've seen in the movie clip. And some of the indicators are wearing baggy clothes to hide their bruises, like wearing makeup, wearing sunglasses, of course. Just being withdrawn, and just not having the confidence that you know a, a a young adult should have. Not wanting to look in the mirror, not wanting to fix their hair or get a haircut, or just not wanting to um, be presentable. Some of the emotional signs is isolating from their friends, just not responding to text messages, or not wanting to take phone calls, spending excessively spending an excessive amount of time in their rooms. I know we like for our children to stay home, but you know we want them to be active. Okay, so other indicators, they're emotionally extreme, like they're very sensitive, and they become very defensive, when you try to talk to them or when you ask them just simple questions. Sherry, can you go to the next slide, please? So, how you want to support them? Okay, you really want to engage in their partner's family. You really want to. I know we like to, to give our children their space, but at the end of the day, um, our children, they need to be protected, and they need to be guided, of course. And even though they might feel like they know everything at the time, but you always want to show them an example of how you may have thought you know everything. And you always want to be honest with yourself. If you are feeling afraid, or if you are just feeling anxious, or if you're feeling a little insecure, like, honesty, honesty, honesty is the best policy. Okay. Sherry, can you go to the next slide, please? So some of the ways to get the conversation started. So you want to ask them, like, what is your favorite thing about this person? Like, how do they make you feel when you're around them? Do you kind of get like your hairs stick up? Or are you paying attention to your body? Are you listening to your gut? And you want to teach them how to trust their gut instincts. Never, ever, ever second question their gut instincts. And we tend to kind of get a little desensitized, as we get older, because we're just going throughout life, and we gotta, go to work, or we gotta, take care of the house or whatever, and we're not really paying attention to how something is making us feel, how something is making us feel uncomfortable. So just teach them to really stay in tune with, and and to listen to it, never override it. Okay. So questions are, what are something you and so and so have decided not to do in your relationship? How does, you know so show you, he or she cares about you? Like, what are some of the gestures? Would you like to invite them over for dinner? Like, make it a habit to spend time with them as a couple. Make it a habit. Okay. Sherry, please go to the next slide. So I want to talk about a little bit of the programs that is looking to offer this upcoming spring. We are a grassroots organization. We're going into our second birthday, so we'll be 2 years old this year. So some of the programs. Oh no, I'm sorry. These are the resources. I'm sorry. So yeah, our programs. So we have a program, whereas though it's called, our peer healing helper. If the individual or the teen is still in the relationship and they haven't quite gotten out of it, so what we do is we pair, mentors that are around the same age as them, to kind of like be, a support system, someone to kind of like talk to, a confidant. Being a confidant is very important. But we do, if there is, some a situation where they're very, very unsafe, or they feel like their life is in danger, we make sure we teach them what's danger. If someone verbally threatens you, that is danger. It's not just a threat. It's not just, I mean, them just being angry, because if someone says that they can hurt you, they will hurt you. But we like to, pair our teens up. So because, like I said, teens listen more to teens. They listen more to each other. So when you have someone who may have experienced, and they've gone through, some of the programs, and they know how to identify, and they know how to encourage and motivate, we pair them, with the individual. We also offer, self-esteem building workshops. We also offer, mental health and sexual education workshops, where we want to learn about, we want the individual to learn about what are some of the causes to, why you may feel safe in an unsafe environment. Like, why is your reasoning and rationing, it's not directed in a way that is protective of you and self-preserving to you. So I also listed some resources that are located in Philadelphia. So we have Butterfly Love Consultant. There we couldn't list. Well, what I can do is I can send Sherry, or I'll put in the Q&A or the chat or whatever, the addresses and the phone numbers and the email contact information. But we have Butterfly Love Consultant. She services teens within the Philadelphia area. She also does um, emergency emergency escape planning if the teen needs to get out of the abusive relationship, like quickly. We also have the Dignity House, which provides shelter. We have Sojourner Truth House, which is located in New York City, and we have the Lutheran Settlement House. Now, I will list, like I said, all of the other contact information in the slide for you guys to access. Okay, so once again, those are our programs that we offer: um, intimate partner group counseling, self care workshops, and sexual education classes. And we have an upcoming event, which is our Youth Violence Awareness March. Last year was really great. We had it in during the month of March, but this year it's going to be held in April. So we're going to march through Center City. We're partnering with other organizations, and we just want to bring awareness to this issue that it's happening. It's happening to our youth. Their life is in jeopardy, and we must be proactive. So the date will be announced on our website, also on our social media. Sherry, can you go to the next slide, please? So please, please, please follow us. Our website is still being developed, but you can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also Eventbrite. And that's our email information, info@sheisyou.org. If you need any additional information or want to contact me about whatever, anything, a teen that needs help and you need some more information. Okay, Sherry.
Thank you so much, Shakina, for all that amazing information. On behalf of the audience and Victims Voice, we'd like to thank you for today's Lunch and Learn program. For those of you who have further questions about the material covered today, or whose questions were not addressed in the Q&A portion, please feel free to connect with our presenters directly. You may also let us know if you have further questions, and we will make sure they are able to reach out to you directly. Don't miss these amazing upcoming events, including next month's Lunch and Learn, Emotional First Aid Kit, tangible takeaways for facing stressful and unexpected situations. If you are an advocate or work for a survivor-centered organization, you'll want to grab that toolkit. Of course, subscribe to hear all about our upcoming events and educational programs. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.